Thank you. You're lucky I'm here, Robert. I went for a walk because I was so nervous and I was going to keep on walking. Thank you. So you all know who I am. I'm Saik'uz Chief Priscilla Mueller. And it's been a really emotional morning for me because my grandmother's picture is all over this place, and I just feel really in sync with all of the speakers when Senator Sinclair spoke. I didn't see his what he was going to speak, his topic, and I sent my topic, what I was going to speak on, and then I saw his after, and I was like, wow. So and a lot of words from Warner and Mary today. I think it's just all fitting together really well. It looks beautiful in here. You guys have done a really good job. So I'm just going to sing this song that my grandmother Celena John composed when I was young. I remembered standing there and dancing in her living room. All of us little kids, we were just, she would be drumming and humming, and then she would get us up and she started singing, and we practiced the song like all day. So this was composed by my late grandmother, Celena John. So it's called the Four Winds song, kind of like the four cycles of life, four directions. So I'll sing the song for you. So I'd like to recognize also that we're on the traditional territory of the Lheidli T'enneh people, and I thank them for allowing us to conduct our business in their territory today. So I'm from the Grouse clan. I'm from Saik'uz, the granddaughter of the late Celena John, who many of you knew and spent a lot of time with her when in the beginning of this organization. And she's the reason why, one of the main reasons why we're sitting here 30 years later. She played a critical role in getting this organization started. I'd also like to recognize some of the other elders, like Mary Teachy spoke about this morning from Saik'uz, the late Mary John Sr. and the late Sophie Thomas. I want to recognize them too. So I know my grandmother knew that she probably would never see this organization in her lifetime. And it grew into one of the most recognized First Nations family care providers in British Columbia and Canada. My grandmother Celena saw a huge gap in the welfare system back in the 80s and the 90s. She knew that we had to take control of our own child welfare and to have a say in where our children were placed. The social well-being of our Carrier Sekani children were in the hands of the provincial and federal governments and our other organizations who did not know who they were and where they came from, or our way of life. So if it wasn't for my grandmother, I would have been part of the 60 Scoops. I would not be standing here today. I am grateful that my grandmother fought to keep me in her care. And we all have a story to tell. I tell people this, we all have a story. This story here is just a tiny, small little part of my story. I'll talk a little bit about my grandmother, Celena, first. Celena was born in Hagoget in 1913, and her mother was the late Adele Tibbetts, and her stepfather was Antoine George. She comes from a long line of hereditary chiefs from Hagolget. As she grew, the elders watched her, and they knew that one day that she was going to be a leader, and they decided to start training her at a very young age. My grandmother used to talk about those days when she sat with her uncles in the longhouse. She remembers sitting with them and hearing stories about her ancestors from way back. She remembers going to the backlats and learning how our business was conducted. When they felt she was ready, her uncles, Daniel, Donald, and Felix George, decided that it was time to give her a name. They gave her her grandmother's name, her mother's mother, Ditnyan, and this happened in her uncle's longhouse. This is where her leadership for the future started, and this is where she became a Zap. When it came to our laws, my grandmother took it seriously. When she married my grandfather, the late Felix John, who came from the Frog clan, her uncle Pat Michelle from Stalaco told her she would have to cross over to the Grouse clan. Suadiet was her uncle Michelle Cho's name, and because he had no sons and only daughters, it was decided that my grandmother would carry the name. This was in 1914. My grandmother and my grandfather, Felix John, worked for 1 year to prepare for the backlats. They saved 4,000 that year, which equivalents to about probably 50,000 today. They bought so much stuff from Prince George that they had to rent a CN rail car to transport the items back to Vanderhoof, and there they rented a transport truck to bring the items back to Saik'uz. My grandmother knew that the name came from a long line of hereditary chiefs, and she knew that it would cost her a lot to pay for the name. When I was growing up, I remembered how serious she was when it came to the backlats. It was serious business, and if you made one mistake, it would cost you. My grandparents ended up having 13 children, and I am the daughter of her 8th child, Mary Teresa. Because of the trauma that my grandmother and mother suffered through the residential school, there was a lot of violence and disconnection from two family. My mother left when I was very young and never came back to see me grow. She would visit once in a while, but she never raised me. Grandma Celena ended up raising me and my siblings along with cousins and foster children. She ended up raising 15 of us, and we were all in the house at the same time, 15. From when we were very young. I was probably 2 or 3 until I graduated from high school. And when I think of those times, I sometimes want to be back there just for a day to spend it with my siblings and my brothers and sisters. We had a lot of good times and some bad times. During that time, Grandma Celena raised us to know our culture, and we were always busy learning something new. In the summertime, we prepared for the winter and worked all summer picking berries, drying fish, drying moose, canning fish. We beaded lots of crafts. We beaded moccasins. I don't ever remember being bored in that back then when I was growing up. Even though my mother left when she was very young, she was raised very traditional. She could shoot a moose, skin it, gut it, carry it out of the bush like a man. She was always setting nets, making nets, and she taught us a lot. When she would come back, sometimes she would come back for a month in the summertime. And those times I cherish. Good memories. Okay, thank you. My children only remember my mother as a beautiful person who loved them very much and never knew the struggles she went through when I was growing up. She was their grandmother and they loved her. She would have done anything for them just as I would do for my 2 granddaughters. My mother died in 2007. And that's another sad story that I won't go into. Like I said previously, if my grandmother decided not to take me into her care, I would have been part of the 60 scoop, where many of our people lost their identities and suffered sexual abuse at the hands of their so-called caretakers, and many have never recovered from their experiences. Look on the streets today, who do you see? You see our people. The foster care system was just a continuation of the residential school system and the impacts it had on our culture and traditions. When we talk about our traditions and legacy, this is what we need to be teaching our children so that they will know who they are and where they come from. When I say our grandmothers, their legacy, my mother and my grandmother live inside of me. I am who they made me. I am them. As they were their ancestors before them, the traditions and knowledge that we pass down to our grandchildren is critical to the survival of our culture. I want to tell you a story about a grandmother in Saik'uz that never gave up when the ministry came to try to take her grandchildren. There were 6 of them, and she fought for almost 2 years to keep them in community and in her care. MCFD was sending the RCMP up to our community one day to remove those children. And our council at the time said, let them try, because when they come, we'll be waiting at the door when they come knocking. They never came. I can't imagine what would have happened to those children if she gave up the fight. Today, 2 years later, they're still in her care, and they're doing well. When you see them, they're beautiful. Dad is on the road to recovery for almost 2 years now, and his mother's also helping with the children. A couple of years ago, I went to an elders gathering in Edmonton, where I listened to a group of ordinary but remarkable women. They were from a group called the Grandmothers Council, and they were all grandmothers. There was probably 14 of them. They decided to form this Grandmothers Council because they wanted to take control over their own child welfare issues in their communities. If they needed a home for one of the children, one of them would step up before the ministry was called, and then they would work with the parents to try to keep the kids in community. When you look at our communities, and when you will see that our grandmothers are the ones who are raising our children. Part of this is traditional, and part of it is necessity. We need to carry the torch that was passed to us by our ancestors and pass it to our children and their children. We need to teach them who they are and what it means to be Daket, to hold their heads up high and be proud of their culture and their heritage. One thing that I really believe that we're doing right in our territories is we're practicing our batlats. When we go into that building, and you could come in, leave with a heavy heart, and you leave uplifted. Everything that was bothering you, maybe you had an argument with somebody that very day, you'd walk out friends. So that's one thing that we're doing right, and I really feel that if we don't bring that back into our communities, we're going to lose our children. We're going to lose some of our traditions. Years ago, I went to a workshop on trauma and residential school system, and I remember this quote, and I never forget it. I have experienced the traumatic accumulated loss of extended family, culture, language, and identity. I could go on about my story, but what about those people that are on the streets? What's their story? As a grandmother of 2 beautiful girls, what do I want them to remember about me? What legacy do I want to leave them? My healing begins when I go to the batlats, when I sit with my elders to listen to our stories, when I go to a powwow and listen to the drum beat as it is one with my heart. My healing begins when I wake up in the morning and choose to have a good day no matter what the circumstance. When I take a deep breath of fresh air, when I smile at my enemy, when I decide that I will not let fear get the best of me. My healing begins with me. I am a strong carrier woman and grandmother. So grandmothers, be brave and courageous and never give up the fight. Awetza. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello? So I'd like to make a couple of presentations here. So part of one thing that we do in Saik'uz is that we try to bring our children in care back to our community at least 4 times a year, so they could spend time with their families, grandparents, their uncles and aunties, and just to learn about their community, and learn who they are, where they come from, and so that when they do, if they age out, that they'll always know that they're welcome back in our community. So we always have a Christmas Children in Care Christmas party every year. We've had it for the last 3 years, and where we bring all our children in care back to the community. We invite the parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, and extended family, and we spend the whole day in our community with our children. And the last 3 years, I just want to recognize, on May 21st, we were supposed to have a luncheon with Mary and her team. And MCFD, we wanted to have an appreciation luncheon to show our appreciation for the financial support that you've given us for us to hold the Christmas party. And so I just wanted to recognize Mary and your team. Thank you, Mary, for all of your hard work that you do for our families, for our communities, for our children. And I want to recognize you for that, and an appreciation from Saik'uz First Nation to you. So, okay, just please. And I'll do this after you. Oh, sorry. I've got a card for you. From Saik'uz First Nation, our children, our future, that is in Carrier, we put in Carrier, so we just want to thank you very much for everything. And I just wanted to do another quick presentation. Sorry, you can open. So I wanted to also recognize Cheryl Vandelaar is not here. She's our family preservation worker from Saik'uz. She's watching online. So Cheryl, we want to tell you how much we appreciate you in Saik'uz. You go above and beyond every single day that I see you working, and I see your heart. I see where your heart is. I know that you love our families and you love our children. You've been doing this for many, many years, probably almost 30 years. Cheryl Vandelaar has been working for our community and for our children in care, and your work doesn't go unrecognized, Cheryl, and Saik'uz First Nation wants to present you with this gift to show our appreciation for all the work that you do for us. So this is for Cheryl from us. So for me, this is grandma, mother, granddaughter, and grandchild. So, or it could be sisters. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. An incredibly powerful share. And of course, we have a gift as well to present. Marlena, if you don't mind. Yes. Thank you so much for taking the time. That story is just, that share is just so powerful. Thank you so much. And this is a token of our appreciation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Great.